There. Should be able to hear me now. Let's see here. There we go. Cool. Would maybe turn the gain up a little bit. Yeah. Nice. All right. Hello, everybody. It's Paul Spooner again. And you might have noticed that I'm wearing a completely outlandish outfit. And that's because Notch was on Twitter and he posted a thing about... you can look it up. He posted like a screenshot of a guy who's like untextured. Or he wasn't untextured. He was like in a video game, but he had like a default like UV map on. And he's like, I would totally wear some clothes like that. And I was like, I'll bet somebody makes those. And so I went online and looked around, and sure enough, nobody makes them. So I went to a website and set up a custom clothing outfit thing and set up a web store. And now you can buy this outfit complete with shoes and pants and, whatever you want. I'll put a link in the chat, I guess. So it was basically just like a completely silly lark that I did, but yeah, it was fun anyway. Let's see. Peripheralarbor.com. Shop. There you go. Yeah, it's still here. It's amazing. It's amazing what you can do if you just want to invest a little bit of time in a crazy joke. So this is my joke outfit, but it's also kind of like, a statement on my 3D modeling philosophy, which is that geometry is reality. Like, geometry is the only thing that's real. Textures, they're just like a gimmick. They're for people who can't afford to have real geometry. So anyway, this is my textures don't matter suit, I guess. It's called UV texture map template. You can search for it, I guess, maybe, but let me just grab this and then we'll put it in the chat somewhere. There we go. So yeah, if you're interested, you can buy this clothing at my Shopify store. Okay, but that's not what we're here for today. Today we are here for some more Procgen spaceships. So let's get right into it. We are here in, so first off, you can get all this stuff on my GitHub. So you go to GitHub/u/dudecon, I think. Anyway, you can get all these, they're all available, all these files. So you don't have to just look at it and me doing it. You can actually like go in there and grab it yourself. So this is the Procgen spaceship thing that I showed off before. It's heavily based on the one from the Blender Institute, and it basically takes a few geometry things. I don't know if I went over it in detail last time, but we'll go over it again. Someone commented on my last video that, hey, you should like make your own from scratch. And it's like, you ever hear of like, don't reinvent the wheel? Like, yeah, you don't need to do everything from scratch. Like, I'm not going to write my own 3D modeling software. I could, but it would take all my time, and then all I'd be left with is like something that's not as good as Blender. So I'm going to use the tools that we have available to us. But I would like to show that, yeah, I have actually gone through this stuff and like looked at every node and understand what it's doing and why it's doing it. And so anyway, so basically what this does is it takes a set of objects, these kind of objects here. And it's lagging because, here, let me turn off my test layout. There we go. So it takes these objects. There's 4 different basic objects, and it takes those and instances them into the world, I guess. Let's see. Let's unmove all that, or maybe undo the movements that I did, because I might have these. I think I don't have reset positions turned on. So yeah. So it takes those here. Let's go to the actual object. Where is it? Is it this one? That's the one. That's the one with the modifier on it. And we're gonna go into here, and there's a shortcut for like output this directly to the output. Let's see. Toggle mute, toggle hidden node. node options. Just like, oh yeah, Control Shift left click. There we go. All right, so this is what it looks like. It just instances a bunch of geometry onto this base. Oh, so here's the base mesh. It just looks like, you can't really see it, but you can see it there. It just looks like this kind of roughly spaceship shaped object. And that's what it's instancing everything on. So there it is. And if you change the seed here, the base seed, you can see. So this is the base seed. This is the only thing that's changing. Everything else is the same. So it's all the same density, all the same objects, all that stuff. So all that's changing is the seed. But if you change the seed, you can see that it's got a bunch of different, it randomly selects some of those objects and puts them on there. So that's what it looks like before anything else happens. So it's just this, this collection of objects. So then, Control Shift left click. Okay, so then it does a couple things with that. So that goes 3 different places. It goes up here to the structure and additive greebles section. And this basically makes a copy of that. Well, we can take a look at it. Let's see. It takes that object. Let's see, I can zoom in here and do this. There we go. So it takes that object and just makes it smaller. You can see how it's kind of got smaller, and it just extrudes it inward basically. And then moves it very slightly downward. And that's important because this structure is the black stuff on the inside, the black greebly bits. And it moves it downward, which is important because it makes the bottom more greebly than the top. And this goes back to like mammal coloring in the wild. Like mammals are lighter on their back than they are on their belly. Or maybe it's the inverse. But anyway, it looks better that way. And it makes the underside more like delicate and fragile, and it's got more detail on it. And it gives it some sense of up and down, which is important in space because, things don't have an up and down. So anyway, it makes it look better by moving it down and moving it inward just so that it doesn't intersect with the surface. And so then what you get is essentially these panels on the outside that are big and kind of cohesive and unitary. And then on the inside, underneath, and a little bit on the underneath, you get all this detail, this dark detailed area. And you could imagine there being pipes and connectors and all kinds of stuff in this area, but it's kind of low poly, it's just these cubes and greebles and things. So that's that, and whoops, yeah. So that is that, and then it adds a couple sets of cubes. So this is instance on points, and this is instance on points, and they're using the same points. It distributes points on faces here. They're the same points, and so what it does is it takes a cube that is kind of fat and a cube. One of them is fat and one of them is long. Yeah, I think this is the, maybe this is the long one. Yeah, this is the long one and this is the fat one. And so you can see on these spaceships, here we go, that there's a fat one and a long one. And it does that, and it kind of randomizes the size of them, but there's always one that's kind of fat and one that's kind of long. And that gives it a little bit more of a design feel, because otherwise you just got a bunch of random cubes everywhere. And this way it looks more like, oh, these are actually objects that are there on purpose, and they have some sort of structure. And it also gives directionality for the whole spaceship. It gives the whole thing a kind of, moving forward through space kind of feel. So I found that works really well for making it feel right. So those are the cubes, and those all go in here. And so we can take a look at that. That's what that looks like. And then, of course, it paints it black. So that's what it looks like at that step. It just takes the same basic shapes, moves them inward, adds some cube greebles to it, makes it all black. So so that's basically what this whole thing does. It also, with that geometry, puts into the greeble subtraction area. And this is one of the things that takes really long, 365 milliseconds. So this is one of the steps that takes the longest out of this whole thing. In fact, I think it might be what the whole thing takes. Yeah, the whole thing takes 427, and that step alone takes 365 of it. So this is what takes the longest, and it's because it's taking some Boolean collection. Yeah, it's taking this set of Boolean objects. So let's look at those. These are the Boolean objects. And so you can see there's one that's just really honking huge. And that's because that's the panel seam object. And this is one of the things that I added to the one that the Blender Studio made, because it just looks way more like a spaceship if it's got these long, kind of angly panel seams on it. And I think it adds tremendously to the look. But anyway, that's what that giant thing is. And then it also has a few other objects. And I made them taller here because if they're not tall, then they tend to get lost inside. And it also adds a little bit to the feel of the whole thing being, let's see, 6, yeah. The whole thing having some vertical integration. So like if you look at, whoop, is it playing? Oh yeah, it's playing. I hit the space bar for some reason. Anyway, so if you look at this, it's got these cavities in the top, and those are mirrored by cavities at the bottom, and that's because those greeble subtraction objects go all the way through the vertically all the way through the ship, and so it gives it a little bit more cohesion there. And then I think I also moved them down a little bit or something. What happened to her? Oh, it's because I've got the wrong one selected again. There we go. So let's look at that. So that takes these greebles, the ones I showed you, and it distributes points on faces, but it distributes it on not on the base geometry, but on the geometry of that first set of instances. So again, this is what that looks like. And then it takes that and it distributes some points on there, and then it instances a bunch of random objects on those points. So that's what those look like. And you can see those slices, those big angular panel seam slices, kind of dominate the area. But you can also see that there's some other pieces there. You know, these vertical pieces and cubes and things. And then those all get subtracted out of the base mesh. And so the base mesh comes in here. Those all get in there. And you have to realize the geometry, or else, because they're also just instances still, and they don't actually have real points and stuff. They're just an instance of the originals. So you have to instance them before you Boolean, because otherwise it won't have anything to Boolean, because it can't Boolean an instance, because instances aren't real. And so that's what that looks like. So it slices all that out of the main ship. So that's the main ship, it's all sliced up. And then it does one more thing with that set of geometry. It puts it over in the engines. So, but before we get there, or no, we'll do the engines next, yeah. So that's again, we've got this base geometry right here. And so we're taking this and we're putting in the engines, and it's the same kind of idea. Let's just go over here. And same kind of idea. We've got a collection of engines. We've got distribute points on faces. We distribute the points on those faces and get some points, but then we do some other stuff with them. We get some statistics from the points, and we find the ones that are at the Y value. We map it 0 to 1, and then we find the Y value for the points that are on the last 10% of the spaceship, the rear 10%. So that's this. Oh, here, let's just take a look at those. So here's the points. Oh, well, here, maybe. Yeah, whatever. Those are the points. And then we delete everything except for the ones on the last 10%. So then we get these points way at the back. And that's important because otherwise you'd have engines all over the spaceship. And you don't want them all over the spaceship. You just want them on the back. And so then we do the same thing. We instance on points. We realize the instances only... In this case, we're doing it twice because I decided in my tremendous optimism that I could totally handle the complexity, and in fact I did, of having the engines instanced 2 points on the production line. So right now, well, you can't really see. Let's turn on the rotation override. There we go. All right, so you can see here the engines are rotated with the body of the ship. And if you say engine rotation, I think that's what this is. Yep. Then they're not rotated, so they maintain their rotation no matter how the ship is rotated, which is kind of cool, right? So now they're still horizontal even though the ship is rotating. And it's a nice feature to have, but what that means is that you need to have two chains for where the engines go. One of them is it takes the geometry, it puts it up into the transform for the rotation. This is the rotation step, which we'll get to in a minute. But anyway, it puts it up in the transform, and then after it gets rotated, you instance it and realize the instances and add them into the geometry. And the other one is it instances them first and realizes them and then puts them back over here in the join geometry. And you can see if we just do this step, there are no engines here because we've got our engines not rotated. If we turn on engines rotation, then we've got the engines here because it's taking the engines and putting them in at this step so that they get rotated. So anyway, that's why there's two of them there. So that's the engine step, and we could do some stuff with like making the engines. There we go, making the engines bigger and smaller. Right now, I think I'm just instancing them, and I'm not doing anything with scaling. And I think it's the same with these, with the base shapes too. Like I'm not scaling them at all. I'm just putting them in there without doing any scaling to them. Randomization of the scaling, which is easy to do, and I'll show you later on another spaceship one. But anyway, this is what that looks like. And so now we've got all these parts. We've got the base mesh that's been sliced up with some booleans. We've got the structure, I call it, the structural mesh that's inside, and we've got the engines all on the ship. So now we just have to do the rotation, which is pretty straightforward. It doesn't look straightforward, but it is pretty straightforward. And again, this is the engine step down here. But it basically just takes the thing, says, are you going to rotate it? And we've got a random value here that's generated for the rotation, so that if you want to turn off there we go. So the rotation override basically allows you to override the random rotation and choose your own. And so then as you go through the random seeds, you can see the rotation is the same here, and you can tweak it or whatever if you want to have a specific rotation that you want. And you can use different values on the script only does Y rotation, but you can do Z rotation, X rotation, that's fine. So you could do some sort of crazy, I don't know why you'd want to do that. That just looks like you tilted it the wrong way. But if you turn off engine rotation, then it's all the engines are pointing forward, even though the ship is all angled up like that. I don't know. It could be interesting. Anyway, so that's what that's all for. I'm going to turn this off again just so that we can see what we're doing. So that geometry all comes in here. We transform the geometry. Then we find the bounding box. We separate out the X and Y for the min and max. We map the range and multiply it by -1 and get our vector value, which we then put into the translation, scaled based on our lateral offset. So this is the lateral offset value. And if we tweak that, you can see here the lateral offset is set to 0.22. And you can increase that to slice it along a more central plane, or you can decrease it so that it becomes less and less tenuously connected, even out to having two ships that aren't connected at all in the middle, like some sort of crazy pod racer or whatever. So that's what the lateral offset does. I like to set it somewhere between 0.1 and 0.3, I think. And I think I've got a random value in there too. Yeah, I do. Anywhere from -0.2 to 0.3. So you should set it to something higher than 0.2, or you can adjust those values. Those are internal. They're not part of the adjustment for the script, but yeah, if it's at or less than 0.2, then it's possible the ship isn't connected at all in the middle, just because of the random value that I've got in there. But you can adjust that too. For the other one, I made it less because I found that much adjustment just made it too random. There's too much variation. But we'll look at that. So anyway, so that's all translation. Let's see. Let's get to the final transform here. So that's what the final transform looks like. It's been rotated. It's been shifted over. You can't really see where it's been shifted over, but it's been shifted over. And now we're ready for the final step, which is, well, in this case, adding the engines back in here. Let's turn off engine rotation so you can see the engines too. There you go. So now we're ready for the final step, which is slicing the thing in half and making it symmetrical. And that happens over here. So we've got our engines. We've got the rotation for this. We also have a few more greebles. We've got the antennas, which are not turned on right now, but we can turn on. So let's do that. I left them off for most of these because my wife said that they look dumb, and she's got much better artistic sense than I do. So I take her seriously when she says stuff like that. But here we go. Let's see. Let's just do that. There we go. So that's what the antennas look like. So I made some antennas. They've got some greebly bits. We don't have to go into too much detail on this, but you can turn up and down the density of them. And you can see they've got a few of them have cross pieces. A few of them have these kind of like conical bits on them. I was kind of shooting for the underside of Sky City, of Cloud City from Star Wars, where it's got that underside where, where Luke's hanging at the end of The Empire Strikes Back. And so that's kind of the look I was shooting for. Don't know if I hit it, but that's what I was aiming for. And I don't know. I think it kind of adds a bit of neat greebly kind of like space city feels to it, as opposed to just like spaceship. Makes it feel more static and more like messy. My wife's input was that it looks like it's melting, which isn't quite what I was going for. But maybe you want your spaceship to look like they're melting. So anyway, that's an option. You can turn the antennas on and off, and that's just a value down here. You can turn it way up if you want, all the way up to 1, or down to some smaller value. And I think that is. Well, let's see. Are those getting instanced off? Yeah, they are. They're getting instanced off of the same points as the greebles. So when we go to our final ship, you can see it. You can see it here. Maybe, yeah. So you can see each of these cubes here. Each antenna comes down from one of the cube greebles. So they're always coming down from a greeble location, as opposed to just coming randomly out from somewhere in the ship. And I felt like that also added a little bit of verisimilitude, where it's not just like an antenna randomly sprouting from the ship for no reason. It's an antenna sprouting from some sort of system that's already on the ship. You can see that there's a thing there. I don't know if it helps, but I also don't have to generate more points that way. So it makes it run a little bit faster too. All right. So, did I select the wrong one again? I did. So we're finally to the point where we've got our antennas, we've got our engines, we've got all our structure, and we join it all together, and then we finally do the final step, which is the bisect. And this just takes a mesh, a plane basically, and it moves it, no, it doesn't move it, it rotates it 90 degrees. So here, we can look at this. So this is just a plane, a really big plane, that then gets rotated 90 degrees. So now it's slicing vertically, and then it Booleans the ship with that plane. So you can see here, this has been sliced off. And if you move the lateral offset, you can see that you can slice more or less of the ship off at that point. And so that's what that does. And then it takes the whole thing and just copies that, mirrors it along the X by scaling it -1, and joins that up. And you're left with the whole ship. So that's the whole script. It's not complicated. It's just a bunch of transforms and instances on points and stuff. But I think the results, well, they speak for themselves. So you can randomize it. You can see how these are a whole bunch of just, all it's doing is changing the base seed. All the settings are staying the same, and you can always tweak it if you want. You can see it generates in, half a second or whatever. we can see exactly how long. Yeah, about half a second, 500 milliseconds. And yeah, I think the results are pretty good. I like them. Like how they look. Yeah, if you want antennas or not, just turn them off. And yeah, so that is the script. And then I wanted to add in some more tuning, let's say. So a friend of mine posted some, let me pull one up. Posted some concept art for some spaceships. Let's see, projects. This one. Yeah. So this might actually be from a video game or something. I don't know where this is from, but he posted this spaceship. And you can see it's definitely a different look from the spaceships that I've been generating, but that doesn't mean that you can't generate ships that look something like this. So I took it as a challenge to try to make something that looked kind of like that. So we'll bring that back later to kind of compare it to the results. But let's just open that up and take a look. So here we go. Here are some examples of those ships. We'll just parse through here. And I think, you know, they're fairly similar. Maybe I can make this smaller. Kind of like bring it over here. Bring it over here, maybe. Can we see that? Yeah, you can see that on the stream. Kind of like this. Oh, so now we can't. All right, well. Yeah. No, that's not. Anyway. So you can see they're kind of the same idea. I've still got the greebles underneath. I've still got some engines at the back. We've still got the basic same structure, but it is slightly different. So let's take a look at what's changed. First off, no antennas, so I cut out the whole antenna section. Also, I decided I didn't want there to be very much variation in the rotation, so I cut out the engine rotation section. The engines are always rotated now instead of only being rotated if you want. So that's not an option in the options anymore. I also let me pull this over so I can tell when I'm on stream or not. We're just gonna join this down. There we go. Now I can tell what you guys can see. And then immediately get rid of my guide posts. So it's also got some custom greebles, a whole custom greeble section. And the custom greebles are for these tank things, these round, silver round tank bits. And again, it's all just in the layout. And this file also is available on my GitHub, so you can go and download it there. And I also did a little more tweaking for where the greebles happen and what conditions they show up in. But it's the same, it's just basically the same idea. Instead of having them show up more on the bottom, I had them make it show up more on the inside so that, man, they're all just so cool. I love it. I love these ships. But you can see there's less variation in the style. There's always the engines in the back like this. There's always the kind of a bit of the tanks in the middle here. But this is just an example of how you can customize the design of the ship based on the greebles you're using and the base geometry you're using. So for example, these are the only two parts that the ship is made from. That's all they're made from. And then again, very few for the subtractive pieces. We still have one of those angle pieces for the panel seams, but then we just got a few cubes for the pieces that are subtracting out. And got engines. We've got 3 engines, although 2 of them are identical. And then that's basically it. So very little variation in the kind of geometry you can get. Oh, and then the base mesh for this is, I did do a little bit of special stuff for here. So let's talk about this a bit. So this is the base mesh. I've got it at a very slight angle here. You can see it's kind of angled inward to the left. And that makes it a little bit wider at the back than at the front. It also allows those really long, very square objects to not be overlapping directly on top of each other. They're offset a little bit, so you get a little more of that dimensionality on the x-axis. And then I've also got another one in the back here, just to give it more area, a little bit more area in the back, more chance of there being objects that show up in the back. And then these are the nacelle surfaces where the nacelles spawn. And the location of these is really important because the position on the ship, on the other generator, it didn't really matter where the base geometry was. In this one, it does matter because the Y location and the X location of this geometry is going to determine which parts are used for which parts of the generation. So let's demonstrate. Oh, it's animating again. All right, so let's demonstrate that. So here is the base layer, and when it distributes, it'll delete any geometry that has an X position. Can you see that? There we go. Has a position in the X that is greater than 0. And what that does is X position is this way, positive. And so anything that's to the right of the origin of the mesh, which is all the nacelles, the points get deleted. So you don't get any geometry spawning out on those nacelles. And if I just take that off, oh, true. There, false. So now you can see that there's a bunch of geometry, there's a bunch of these objects spawning out here where the nacelles are getting generated, and it ruins the look. So that's why I did that. So you don't get any of the engine nacelles spawning, oops, come on, out on the edge. And likewise for the engines, does the same thing, only it deletes everything less than, let's see, Google subtraction, engines, there they are. So same thing, position, separate, and anything less than 0 gets deleted. Now it also, does it? No, that's all it does. So that allows you to control where on the ship you want your engines to be and where you want your main structure to be. And I think that works pretty well. I don't know if it worked for every single design, which is why I made a special slice for just this, or a special version for just this ship. But it shows you that it's really useful for if I wanted to, say, make a ship that had some engines up front, maybe like some set of engines, like over here, then I totally could do that. And now I've got some engines up in front. And all of my generation options would have a chance of having an engine up there. So it's like, if you want your ships to look like that, awesome. Just like move the geometry around. And it lets you kind of parse it out in the geometry instead of having to like go into the code or go into the nodes all the time or be messing with values. It's just like right or left of the origin, and it makes it really simple. So that's that part of the ship generator. Let's kind of move this up and make, there we go. So now we've got like more engines on the top. That's kind of fun. Let's see, anything else that changed on this? We've got those special greebles, the custom greebles. They're just right at this point, they're just tanks. I'm also scaling those by a random value here between 0.6 and 1.6. So they have some size variation. You can see some of them are bigger than others. And again, that goes back to what appeared to be the case for, maybe even more variation would be warranted, but anyway, in the reference art. Something I haven't added is these little lights for like the cabin lights or whatever those lights are supposed to be. as you can tell, not big on textures. So maybe someone else can add that if they're interested in it. But that is more or less the whole thing. Everything else in here is largely the same as the other generator. It's just using a different set of parts and slightly different settings. I changed the random rotation. It used to be rotating. Let's see. It used to be rotating it from. Let's see. Rotate, transform, rotation. Here we go. Yeah, random value. It used to be larger values for these, so I made them slightly smaller, closer to the center, so that they're not quite so extreme. The rotations aren't quite so extreme, and I think that looks good. It keeps it with that kind of vertical kind of style, while still giving it a little bit of interest, you know, with the angling in or out that happens. They're all so neat. Now, you do get points where sometimes the generator ship that isn't actually connected to itself. And you can deal with this one of two ways. You could increase the density so that you have more objects, so that you have a higher chance of it connecting. You can also see that there's this big block in the back here, and it's always there. There's the big block. There's the big block. There's the big block. There's the big block. And that's something I added right here. Where is that? Index, cube fallback. No, it's not a cube fallback. Is it in the base structure? The geometry and some points. Join. Yeah. So it takes a boxy part. It changes its position and size, basically to get it in the spot that I wanted it, right between those engines. Because I was getting too many points where the engines were not being supported by any of the structure, and I always wanted there to be something back there so that we could have some tanks on it. And so I just said, default, you're always going to have at least one thing right there in the back. And if you wanted to, you could always add another piece that ran like a central strut that ran all the way up from back to front, just so that the whole thing was always connected, no matter what other objects got instanced on there. Now, there's still the possibility that one of the slices would like cut through it in such a way that it wasn't supported, but you know, it gives you at least a starting point. So that's something I did that was different from the other one, just because this specific ship design had a very, you know, doesn't really look very good with the engines all in front like that. Just because this ship had a specific look that I was going for, and I didn't want to sacrifice that. So like you could move this if you wanted to be really long. You could do that, and then your ships would be even longer and have a chance to be, you know, a little more complicated, and pieces like, oh, they're so cool, man. I mean, like, look how cool that is. Now we're running into problems now where the end of our slice is not, it's not getting the whole ship, because this started way back here and it doesn't extend out far enough to cut through the whole thing. But that could all be fixed. Extend the length of that. In fact, let's fix it now. I'll just take this and Y, and there's no reason it can't just come way out here. So there we go. So now it extends all the way out. Whoop, missed it. All the way out to the front. And yeah, so now you got spaceships that look more like a gun, I guess. And you could always, yeah, you could always make it look even more like a gun. In fact, I'd like to make a gun generator at some point that just like generates guns, like sci-fi looking guns, because it's basically just this, only with a barrel and a handle. It's like, you're done. You've made a fancy gun. But anyway, this is a fun project. And yeah, I kind of like it long like that, because it gives it a little more chance for some unique kind of shapes. Like, look at that. Isn't that cool? I think that's really cool looking. All right, so anyway, I could just sit here and look at these all day. They're very fun. But you can get this script at my GitHub. Let me just pull that up and put that in chat or something. Let's see. Let's see. GitHub. Blender scripts. And we'll put that in the chat. And I'll put both of these in the video description as well, so you can get to them easily. But that's another spaceship generator. Basically the same as the first one, only this is based on a specific piece of concept art. So now I'd like to actually live on stream do development for a piece of concept art. There's also, my buddy also sent this one. And I hope this isn't copyrighted or whatever, because I don't have any copyrights to this thing, but kind of like an asteroid-y kind of thing with a bunch of craters and stuff out of it. And so I made a crater generator and kind of got carried away with it. Maybe I'll optimize that a bit. That would be kind of fun to work on optimizing that some. And then maybe we can make something that does something spaceship kind of like this. So let's see. Open Crater Maker. No, don't say the changes to that. I was just showing off. So here's my Crater Maker. And this does a similar kind of thing. It's a lot simpler because all it does is just put craters on stuff. But it, I've got a set of 4 kind of crater bases. And in fact, let's decimate these a little bit. Don't optimal. And we'll cut down the number of faces that this thing has. 50%. That's a little much. 0.3. About like that. 0.4. And that way, maybe it won't take quite so long for our poor Boolean operator. Copy to selected. All right, but those ones need a few more vertices because they are already lower poly because they're not subdividing them as much. There we go. And then same thing with the craters. The craters are just the same kind of idea. Let's give those a hard face there, and then we'll go over to this maybe and copy this over, and then those look all right. This one could use a bit more. I don't know if I want to lose all that detail around the bottom there. Or is that, did I do that on purpose? There. Maybe like that-ish. I want these to be as low poly as possible because otherwise the Boolean takes forever to run. All right, so that's a little better. And then you can see they just get placed all over the surface. And right, I've got this finalized thing because this takes like 10 seconds, or it did before. We'll just see. Let's just see how long it takes to run now that I've got it a little bit more optimized. Oh, that's better. 1.6 seconds. Yeah, that's much better. So it basically takes all of these, joins them all up, Booleans them all together, and then subtracts out the crater parts. So here's the Boolean where it Booleans them all together with the surface. So you can see that it's all, you know, a cohesive mesh now. Whereas before, they were just instances on the surface. Now, one thing that's kind of frustrating is that this step should be unnecessary because the remesh modifier does the same thing, only way faster. It does a union basically. It just takes all the stuff and pulls it together in a single mesh. A lot faster than the Boolean union does. But for whatever reason, there's no way to get the remesh in there, and I haven't figured out a way to maintain the position of the craters across the remesh step, because the remesh gets rid of the vertices that are isolated, and I need some geometry to store the locations of the, unless I store them in a property maybe. I don't know. I'm not super great at this geometry nodes thing yet, but anyway, so you can take this. So I've got a mesh stack. This is just a cube. It's pretty. Oh, now it's gonna. There. Is this gonna be all laggy? Yeah, it's gonna be all laggy. Oh, I should turn this off. Shouldn't be showing the geometry nodes. Here. There. All right, that's much better. All right, so this is just a cube that I've got a subdivision on. And so you could make this whatever shape you want. You can make a flat planet or whatever. You can put craters on anything, right? And then it just distributes those points on it and does all the Booleans. 1, 2, there we go. And then it takes that and remeshes it, and that ties the whole thing together and makes it kind of smooths it out a bit, knocks all the hard edges off, or most of the hard edges off, and then decimates it. That smooths it out too because it removes a bunch of the unnecessary geometry. And then I've got a subdivision on there just to kind of smooth it out a little bit more. And I think it turns out pretty well. I mean, they certainly look kind of cratery. It's kind of cartoony, but you could scale it down if you wanted to. And yeah, and then you can just take that and change the seed. And a couple seconds later, you've got a new planet with different craters on it. So it's kind of fun. So that's the crater script. And yeah, I wish there was a way to get the remesh to work where I could like add the mounds, remesh it, and then add the craters. Because I feel like that would cut the processing time almost in half. Because about half of that time, you can see here, yeah, about half of that time is remesh. There's 0.7 seconds for adding and then another 0.8 for subtracting. So it would be nice if I could just skip this whole first remesh, but especially since I'm doing the remesh anyway, right? But oh well, it's fine. It'd be kind of fun to add like cities and stuff in there too, like have it add like a domed city of some kind in the crater. That'd be pretty sweet. Anyway, that's not what we're trying to do right now. Right now we're trying to do another spaceship that looks something like the spaceship in that concept art. So let's do that. So I'm just gonna kind of try to get the vibes off of this thing. They all have a pointy end at the end of them. You can see they're all kind of pointy on the ends. So that tells me, and they're all kind of flat on the top. You can see that these are all flat on the top and kind of more curved on the bottom. So maybe we've got like a pointy bit that's always in the front, or like a base object that's like kind of like a wedge of some kind. And then these are kind of more almost like crescent shapes. These more more crescent-y kind of shaped things and you get some really sharp stuff in the back. So maybe they're let's see here. Let's go back to what's going to be our best. I think the boxy one. Let's see, open recent. The boxy one might be. Oh, we do want to save this because this is better now. Let's see, turn off finalize so that the file loads easily. There we go. Save it. All right. Open boxy. Okay. Okay, so let's turn off our test layout so that we can mess with stuff easily. We're going to turn on construction. So this is going to be our base object. We don't really need it to be symmetrical. Well, let's see. All the craters are, it looks like they've got intersection on this side, so symmetry wouldn't hurt. Symmetry wouldn't hurt. You can make it symmetrical. Probably do like a, you can see from the lines, the lighting lines on this one here, that looks like it's got a little bit of a downward angle to it. So let's see. Let's do this. Do something like that. Collapse those down. Maybe get rid of that. We're going to do a subdivision on this. Maybe when it's all done. We'll do a subdivision when it's all done. Maybe merge these two. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, could do. Maybe. This across, bring this out, just kind of tie it back together so it's not any hard faces on the back. So that'll be our core, and then we want our structural parts. These aren't right at all. Let's see, what do the structural parts look like? It's almost like a curve on the bottom and a curve on the top, but there's more. There's some bottom curve parts nearer to the front and top curve parts near to the back. No. Kind of wondering if I can just extrude the points on the edge to give it that that nice beveled look, or maybe we'll just do a bevel modifier. That might work. All right, so we're gonna have these aren't even modifier driven. I should make these solidify driven. Maybe like that thick, maybe something like that. This. Something like that, maybe? That could work. Maybe a little thicker. Let's set the offset to 0. That's always fun. Probably a faster way to do that, but that works. All right, so we've got that. And then this is going to be a curved part or something. And we're going to make an exact copy of it. But we're going to put this a little more toward the top and this a little more toward the bottom. And that way, and maybe a little more toward the back, just to give it a little bit of differentiation in the shape. See how that looks. Okay. Curved parts, subtraction. Okay, now this is going to be interesting because the only subtraction I see happening on here is craters. So let's do some very cratery looking bits. And we're going to copy those over from tank thing. Where's tank thing? Have it? Hidden somewhere? Where'd he go? Wait. Oh. He's in some sort of... Alright. Tank thing. We shouldn't need that, so we're just going to move it over here. Delete that hierarchy. Don't really need the spaceships hierarchy either. Test layout should be fine. Yeah, let's make a crater. So our crater is going to be a cone. Let's see. This can all... this. And can we maybe do like this? Something like that. 16. Let's kind of tone it down to 7. See if we can get some good results with that. And I think we want this to be a bit larger. but we can always scale it down, and that seems a little steep as well. So let's just maybe shallow it out a bit, maybe like 45 almost. Yeah, so default will be able to go all the way through, but then we'll set some randomization so that it scales down a bit. Okay. So that's our crater, the crater cutter. And then these we don't need anymore because that's all we've got on our subtraction. Engines, I don't think these have engines. It doesn't look like they have engines to me. Could be wrong, but it just looks like a big old lumpy bit of rock. We can always, we'll save one of them. We'll just take the engines out of the thing. Construction, this is our main front bit that we're just gonna be the main part of the ship. All right, turn on test layout. And here we go. Here's what we've got. Doesn't look great, but it hasn't been tuned. I mean, it's not horrible. But let's fix it up. So, go over to our geometry nodes. And we're going to start with the main ship. Oh, yeah, we haven't fixed this yet, so don't need those. What's the general shape? It's just a big long thing. Maybe go like this, and then extrude this back this way, scale that down a bit, scale that down a bit, maybe like that. Okay. It's not horrendous. Let's see. Original boxy part. Let's just get this bit. We're going to get that in the right place. Don't like how long this is taking to generate. There. Okay, so that's going to be up front. We're just going to set all this to 1. Go. Rotation. In fact, let's move this out a bit even. Maybe not that much. Like that. And good. Okay. And then those greebles, they just need to be smaller, I think. So let's just take both of these, scale them down. Oops. Yeah. Maybe like that. Then we do want some random scale on that. So we're going to add a random value. It's going to be a float from 0.5 up to 1.89, 1.8. That value. There we go. And we'll pull in our greeble seed for the seed. So then we can randomize that a bit. Cool. And okay. It's looking kind of cool already. You know, we might not even need this structure step at all because it doesn't look like these ships have an internal structure. So that would greatly simplify what we're doing. Structure and cube greebles. That whole thing just gets deleted. Yep. Custom greebles, we don't need any of that. So we've got the base layer. We've got greeble subtraction. Okay, let's take a look at this here. Our base layer needs to have a higher density. Distribute points on faces. There we go. Okay. And then it's not getting tied together well enough. I think maybe these need to have like a tail on them or something. Maybe these curved bits need to have a tail of some kind. What if we just kind of pull them out like this? Yeah, that could work. I'm kind of tempted to make this just the same as the rest of them. Maybe like bevel one edge. Well, let's fiddle with it a bit later. Let's reduce this again back down to 1. Maybe make those a little bit bigger. There we go. That'll work. Okay. Now we want the craters to be on the edges. We don't really want them in the center. We want to be bigger on the edges and smaller in the center, because we want this really striking cutout along the edges of the thing, kind of cookie cutter or crater cutout edge. And we don't want any really big ones in the middle. All right, base layer, subtraction, scale, greeble scale. Well, greeble scale, that's easy to change. I think maybe we'll have 2 of them. We'll have like a small one that's just on the face. And really, we don't want any. Are there any that are the other direction? The rotation is always 0. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, okay. So that's right. Rotation is always 0. And then the scale, as we scale them down. So maybe we want a few that are like on the surface. They're just pockmarking it a bit, and then the rest of them, like the really big ones on the edge, a few big ones on the edge go all the way through. I wonder if we can do the position. Let's see, distribute points on faces. Let's delete some of these points. Delete geometry. And our selection is going to be and then maybe like the no, not integer float. We want to float, and we want to grab the position, but we don't grab the whole position. We just want to grab separate. I just want to grab the z position, and we want to get the absolute value of that z position, and then we should be able to less than, start eliminating the ones in the center. There we go. Okay, so now if we increase the greeble density, we can cut them out of the middle, so we only get the ones near to the edge. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Increase the scale. Oh yeah, now we gotta reduce the density quite a bit. We don't want quite that many. Why is it not cutting all the way through? That's a little weird. I want the scale to be randomized a bit. Multiply by random value from 0.6 to 1.6. There we go. A bit of randomization there. Maybe just, ooh, oh my, oh my. It is the right size. It's just not. Oh, and we're getting some cutoff here. Okay, let's go back to our crater cutter and pull this out a bit more. Like that. Yep. Yep, it's too big. Or we're not cutting them off far enough out. It's kind of interesting. Some of them are kind of cool, like that's kind of cool. We don't really need any rotation, I don't think. We could probably cut out the whole rotation stage. Let's pull this into here. No. And just take this whole thing, delete it. Pull this into here, and this goes into here. There we go. And oh, we remove the bisect. Oops. Well, that's all right. That's not what we want. Transform. X. Well, that's not really at all what I'm going for. I'm not sure what I can do to really change how this works, though. Let's see. I can move that front bit up a bit more. Maybe make it a bit bigger. So we do that. Ooh, maybe not that much bigger, but like that maybe. And Y. Like that. It's not terrible. I think that's too much, though. Good old golden ratio. Okay. And, you know, let's give this the same material as the rest of the ship. I think that might be throwing me off a bit. Helps it tie together a bit. Yeah, and it also needs to be... That was a cute idea about having it low poly, but I think that, yeah, that's going to help. So now it just kind of looks like a shiv, a poorly designed shiv that's got a bunch of holes shot in it. What if we remesh this whole thing? To kind of tie it together. And then decimate it. Woo! Not that much. And then subdivide it. Okay, so looks a lot better. It ties it together a lot better. Maybe our density is still a little bit high. 0.4 and 0.4 maybe. We could increase that. Increase that a bit. I mean, it's a lot closer. It's a lot closer than what we started with. It's not perfect. There's no way that that's perfect, but it's you know, it's kind of getting there. It's kind of getting there. What if we did like an unsmooth? An unsmooth to it. Let's see, like a Laplacian smooth or something. negative. I don't know if that's better or worse. Kind of feels worse, honestly. It was a cute idea, though. Let's decrease the voxel size to like 0.18. There we go. And then we'll crank up the decimate a little bit. And then our smoothing. Yeah. Yeah, that's... Well, it's fast enough. I mean, I can't complain about that. I feel like maybe the back of our... Maybe our base greebles could have a bit more shape to them to kind of give us some of that shape for free. Maybe give us a little bit more of the shaping. Let's see. That. Just give it a little bit more character, you know. And then let's see, what can we do with the edge data? Bevel, convex. If we add a bevel to this, or no, not a bevel. Yeah, bevel. Wait. Output vertex groups. Shell. Okay, we're going to add a vertex group, and then we're going to put that vertex group in the shell, and then we're going to do it by vertex group. Okay. And then crank that up. Oh, and then we need some of that. A little more space so we can get the bevel to reach all the way to the edge. Or most of the way to the edge. And then link modifiers. Scale that -1. Okay. Okay. How does that look? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. We're getting a little more of that shapefulness. It's kind of getting there. Kind of. What happens if we turn off all this extra remesh stuff? Where are we at? Okay, we don't want them to not go through So I think we need to get the bottom end of our random values a little bit higher. Let's set that to 1. There we go. And then maybe set this a little bit higher. It's kind of cool. Maybe increase the base density. Should probably be a parameter. Okay. I feel like that's actually going in the wrong direction. What if we decrease it? It's not really tied together well enough. Okay, what if we did a Poisson disk? Oh no. I've made a terrible error. I've made a terrible error. Stop. It's gonna do like 100,000 of these things because it always, the Poisson disk is always, the settings are always just bonkers. Why do you have to be so bonkers, Poisson disk? Poisson. Alright, well if you don't come back from hanging up, I'm gonna have to kill you. Okay. Let's see where we're at. How much did we save? No autosave. Where's my autosaves? No autosaves. That's a little weird. I thought I fixed this. Maybe not. No autosave. Okay. Well, I guess that's the end of the stream. I don't have an autosave of it. We can go and recreate it, I guess. It shouldn't be too hard now that we know what we're doing. But yeah, that was my attempt to try to kind of make something like that. Maybe taller. Maybe we just need like a taller shape. Or like a more like a large base shape with then a little bit of greebles around the edges. I'll have to mess around with it a bit and see if I can figure out a way to get a little bit more bulk to it, because it seemed like it wasn't getting enough bulk. There wasn't enough like meat in there. I think maybe Poisson disk would be the way to go. It's just I need to set it up before I run the thing. How are we doing here? No viewers. All right. Well, I think we'll call it a day. That was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you later.